In life, we often worry about the big threats, the kind we can see coming. We're cautious when we drive, we lock our doors at night, and we stay away from dangerous places. But what if I told you that the real dangers are much closer to home, hiding in plain sight? Some of the most innocent-looking things around us can turn deadly, catching us off guard when we least expect it. Today, I'm going to share with you some terrifying stories of everyday items and situations that have turned lethal in an instant. From the vegetables in your kitchen to the plants in your backyard, these seemingly harmless things have the potential to kill without warning. We think of potatoes as one of the most basic and harmless foods, something that's on nearly every dinner plate. But did you know that if potatoes are stored improperly and start to rot, they release a toxic gas that can be deadly? In 2013, a chilling tragedy took place in Russia that shocked the world. An entire family was killed one by one in a nightmarish sequence, all because of rotting potatoes. The family stored potatoes in their cellar, and when the potatoes went bad, they released a lethal gas. Each family member, concerned about the ones who had gone missing, descended into the cellar only to succumb to the gas themselves. They never knew what hit them. This deadly gas, produced by rotting potatoes, is virtually invisible and odorless, making it impossible to detect until it's too late. The toxin causes unconsciousness, and in large enough quantities, it leads to death. I personally had a close call with this terrifying phenomenon when I was a child. My grandmother had a potato box in her kitchen, a simple wooden box that she used to store potatoes. One day, out of pure curiosity, I decided to lift the lid to see what was inside. That's when everything went black. I woke up sometime later on the floor, gasping for air, my chest burning so badly I could hardly breathe. At the time, I had no idea what had happened. But now I know that the potatoes in that box had likely started to rot, and I'd inhaled enough of the toxic gas to knock me out. It's a chilling reminder that even something as innocent as a potato can become deadly if we're not careful. You've probably seen it in gardens or along roadsides, a beautiful, hardy plant called oleander. Its delicate flowers come in shades of pink, white, and red, and it's often used as an ornamental shrub. But beneath that beauty lurks one of the most poisonous plants in the world. Oleander is so toxic that ingesting even a small amount can be fatal. What's even more terrifying is that many people don't realize its danger. Every year, children die from poisoning after accidentally coming into contact with oleander, either by touching its leaves or using its branches to roast marshmallows over a campfire. The plant releases toxins not only through its sap, but also through the smoke it produces when burned. Once ingested, the toxins can cause nausea, vomiting, irregular heartbeats, and even death. It's a silent killer that hides in plain sight, often growing in people's backyards. There was a case in California where a mother picked an oleander flower to give to her baby, completely unaware of the danger. Thankfully, a passerby saw what was happening and rushed to warn her before tragedy struck. But not everyone is so lucky. It's not just oleander either. Other common plants like daffodils, philodendrons, and even certain houseplants are highly toxic and can be lethal if ingested. Always be cautious about the plants around you, especially if you have children or pets. One of the most heartbreaking and unexpected dangers is the humble grape. This small, seemingly harmless fruit has been responsible for numerous choking deaths, particularly in young children. It might seem absurd, but grapes are the perfect size to block a child's airway completely. And when that happens, there's almost no way to remove it in time. A mother once watched helplessly as her young daughter choked on a grape. Despite their best efforts, neither she nor the paramedics could save her. By the time help arrived, the little girl was already brain dead. Ever since I heard that story, My wife and I have been overly cautious with our own children. We cut their grapes into small pieces, no matter how old they were, just to be safe. Because no parent should ever have to face that kind of nightmare. And I'm no stranger to this danger myself. When I was a kid, I once grabbed a grape at a family party, not thinking twice about it. The next thing I knew, I was choking. Thankfully, my Aunt Nancy, who was 10 beers deep at the time, noticed and performed the Heimlich maneuver, saving my life. It's crazy to think that a tiny grape could have killed me, but that's how quickly it can happen. It's easy to dismiss a toothache as a minor inconvenience, something that can wait until the next dentist visit. But did you know that untreated dental infections can lead to death? One woman shared the devastating story of her son, who died from a simple impacted tooth. The infection spread from his tooth to his brain, and by the time it was detected, it was too late. This is a silent killer that most people never think about. The next time you feel a nagging pain in your tooth, remember this story and don't put off that dentist appointment. We've all seen it before. Someone inhales helium from a balloon to make their voice sound funny. It's a harmless party trick, right? Not exactly. Inhaling too much helium can lead to a lack of oxygen in the brain, causing you to pass out. And if you're not careful, it can kill you. One person shared their near-death experience with helium after inhaling too much without taking a breath of air in between. They quickly realized what was happening and started taking deep breaths to recover. But not everyone is so lucky. Some people have passed out and died from lack of oxygen after playing with helium. When we think of house fires, we imagine the flames, the heat, and the burning. But what most people don't realize is that the majority of fire-related deaths aren't caused by the fire itself, but by the smoke. Carbon monoxide and other toxic gases fill the air long before the fire reaches you, causing you to become drowsy, then unconscious, and eventually dead. Most victims of house fires die in their sleep, never even realizing they were in danger. That's why having working fire alarms in your home is so crucial. It's not just about detecting flames, it's about giving you enough time to escape before the smoke overtakes you. Fire alarms can increase your chances of survival by 50%. So if you don't have one in your home, now is the time to get one. And don't forget to check the batteries regularly. It's easy to underestimate the danger of a simple fall. After all, who hasn't tripped or slipped at some point? But what many people don't realize is how fragile the human brain really is. A fall that seems minor can lead to a traumatic brain injury, TBI, which can cause permanent damage or even death. One man shared his terrifying experience after slipping on ice at work. He hit his head and lost consciousness, but when he woke up, he thought he was fine. He was wrong. By the time he reached the hospital, he was suffering from a severe brain bleed and slipped into a coma. He was lucky to survive, but he lost a significant portion of his memory and emotional stability. TBIs are often unpredictable. Even a light bump to the head can have devastating consequences. That's why it's so important to be cautious, especially when it comes to activities like climbing ladders or riding bikes. Always wear a helmet, and if you hit your head and lose consciousness, seek medical attention immediately. Life often throws surprises our way, and not all of them are pleasant. I learned this firsthand when what seemed like a simple accident turned into a discovery that altered the course of my life forever. I never thought a fall could lead to something so drastic. It all started when I slipped and hit my head, suffering a concussion. Standard procedure. I was rushed to the hospital, where doctors ordered a brain scan just to be safe. But the results showed something far more alarming than a minor concussion, a cyst in my brain. Unbeknownst to me, it had been growing there for years, completely unnoticed. I didn't have any symptoms before, or so I thought. But now that the cyst was discovered, it explained the migraines that had started plaguing me. The migraines were worsening, and other serious symptoms were creeping in, too, things I couldn't ignore. Eventually, the pain became unbearable. My doctors decided surgery was necessary. An internal tube was installed to drain the cyst, like an 4-drip, into my abdominal cavity. Thankfully, the fluid from the cyst, known as cerebrospinal fluid, CSF, was mostly harmless and would simply be absorbed by the surrounding tissue. It was a freak accident that led to an even more startling discovery. The fall may have been unfortunate, but it saved me from a medical crisis that would have worsened with time. The lesson here? Sometimes life's strangest twists and turns can be blessings in disguise. Speaking of unexpected dangers, confined spaces can hide deadly risks. Whether it's a small basement, a tunnel, or any space that lacks proper ventilation, a hidden danger lurks. Low oxygen levels. What many don't realize is that your body doesn't always signal when you're suffocating in a low oxygen environment. You won't feel short of breath or like you're choking. Instead, you'll just get lightheaded before losing consciousness altogether. Even something as mundane as rusting metal can deplete oxygen levels, leaving the air unable to sustain life. The scariest part? If there's no airflow to replace the oxygen-depleted air, anyone entering the space becomes vulnerable. This is why confined spaces claim more than one victim. Often, the first person to realize something is wrong ends up being rescued by someone else, and both become victims. The rule of thumb? Always take caution in these environments. They don't warn you before it's too late. And if you see someone unconscious, don't rush in without understanding the risks. Sometimes, the real danger is invisible. On a lighter note, or so I thought, pressure washers, those seemingly harmless tools, are a danger you don't see coming. One sunny afternoon, I was casually cleaning my porch, sandals on, thinking I was safe. But one misstep, and the high-powered water jet hit my foot. Instantly, a layer of my sandal sole peeled off, and I felt a sharp sting that lasted for days. What started as a minor inconvenience turned into a wake-up call. Pressure washers are no joke. A pressure washer can cause serious harm if misused. The water pressure is so strong that it can cut through skin or even cause deep tissue damage, similar to what happens with high-pressure fluid injections. These injuries may look like tiny pricks, but they can lead to significant complications if the fluid seeps into muscles and tissues. In extreme cases, people have lost limbs because they didn't take such wounds seriously. The lesson here? Wear proper protective gear, even for everyday tasks like pressure washing. Because what seems like an ordinary task can quickly turn into something dangerous. Sometimes, we feel invincible, like nothing bad could happen to us. But that sense of invincibility can lead to tragedy. This reminds me of a chilling story. A close friend of mine lost her life while riding a party bus. It was supposed to be a joyous celebration, a night of fun, but one misstep turned it into a nightmare. As the bus sped down the freeway, she lost her balance while dancing and fell against the door. The door wasn't properly secured, and she was thrown from the bus at high speed. Before anyone could react, a car hit her. She didn't survive. It was supposed to be a night of celebration for her 30th birthday. Instead, it ended in a closed casket funeral. She left behind 5 young children, all under the age of 10. Her story is a stark reminder that safety measures, like properly securing doors or wearing helmets, aren't just there to inconvenience us. They save lives. When we neglect these simple precautions, the consequences can be devastating. Jack Daniels, yes, the man behind the iconic whiskey, died from a simple mistake, kicking a safe. Frustrated after forgetting the combination to his safe, he kicked it in anger. The blow broke his toe, and days later, he succumbed to sepsis, an infection that spread through his bloodstream. The moral of the story: never underestimate how small injuries can spiral out of control if left untreated. Water conservation is another overlooked danger, especially when hiking or lost in the wilderness. Many hikers believe rationing their water is the best approach to survival. But what they don't realize is that being dehydrated forces your body to use more water, creating a dangerous cycle. If you ever find yourself in this situation, drink your water at a normal pace. Don't hoard it. Your body needs hydration to function at its best. You never know the power of a punch until it's too late. My great-grandfather learned this the hard way. One evening, in the heat of an argument, he punched a man. It wasn't meant to be deadly, but the man collapsed and never got back up. My great-grandfather was racked with guilt for the rest of his life. His story stayed buried for generations, only resurfacing after his death. We often hear about one-punch deaths, but few realize how easily it can happen. Violence has no place in our world, especially when a single blow can take a life. An abscessed tooth might not sound like a death sentence, but it can be. A friend of mine brushed off his toothache, thinking it would pass. Days later, the infection spread to his bloodstream, and that was it. He was gone. I, too, had a similar scare. One weekend, my face swelled up from a tooth infection, and since the dentist was closed, I went to the ER. The doctor was annoyed and dismissed me, asking why I didn't wait until Monday. But what if I had waited? A tooth infection can turn deadly if ignored. It's a reminder that health concerns, no matter how small they seem, should never be ignored. Life is unpredictable, and danger often comes when we least expect it. Whether it's a seemingly minor injury, a hidden medical condition, or a forgotten safety precaution, the smallest things can have life-changing consequences. It's these moments that remind us to take nothing for granted and always be cautious, no matter how routine a task may seem. And it was supposed to be a peaceful day, a simple outing like any other. My wife and I decided to have a nice meal at Cracker Barrel, hoping to enjoy a moment of relaxation amid our busy lives. We sat down, ordered our food, and waited. My wife, being cautious due to a severe food allergy, specifically requested her salad without bacon. This wasn't a casual preference, it was a matter of life and death. She explained to the waiter, as clearly as she could, that bacon or any pork product wasn't just something she didn't like. It was something that could send her into an allergic reaction, potentially something fatal. The waiter seemed to understand, nodded along as he scribbled on his notepad, and assured us the request would be handled. We relaxed, trusting everything was under control. When the food arrived, something wasn't right. My wife immediately spotted bacon crumbles scattered over her salad, as if her health wasn't a priority. We called the waiter over and reminded him this wasn't just a minor mistake. It was a serious health hazard. He took the salad back, and we assumed the issue would be fixed promptly. However, when the dish returned, my wife instantly noticed that it was the same salad, with the bacon barely scraped off. There were still little pieces hiding at the bottom of the bowl, a deadly reminder of the mistake. This was unacceptable. At this point, I called for the manager, explaining the situation in detail, showing him the remnants of bacon on the plate. His face tightened with fury. He apologized, disappeared into the kitchen, and returned with a fresh salad, one he assured us he had made himself. The relief didn't last long. The manager excused himself to have a word with the waiter, who came back looking visibly downcast for the rest of the night. We didn't think much of it. Our main concern was my wife's health. The gravity of cross-contamination was something they clearly didn't understand. What we didn't realize at the time was that the damage had already been done. By the next morning, my wife was in severe pain, racked with nausea, vomiting, and an excruciating migraine. Every joint in her body ached as the allergic reaction took hold. We were lucky it wasn't worse. Others, I know, aren't so fortunate. For some, exposure to pork or its derivatives, gelatin, for instance, can lead to anaphylaxis, a severe and potentially fatal reaction.